Hey guys, Entropy here again. Today we'll be moving back to some more intermediate discussion into how triggers work and the theory behind it. Of course, this is all my personal opinion. Um, there are counter arguments, and this is something that we will discuss in this video. So let's recap the zero system, right? This is very different from the paper card game, Card Fight Vanguard. This is Vanguard Zero. It's an the distribution of cards are different. There's 40 cards instead of 50 cards. Other than your starter, you have a 33% chance to get one of each grade, and which means the chance of hitting a trigger is actually higher in Vanguard Zero, right? Secondly, you can also customize which triggers you want onto your grade threes. This is quite relevant as cards like Dragon Monk Gojo, for example, when you drive check a grade 3, it does something. In Paper Vanguard, it's like, at least if you don't hit a trigger, if you hit a grade 3, you get to do something, right? Now it's if you hit a trigger, you get the trigger and something else. So it's more risk for more reward. But it also means that Gojo gets to hit its skill more because of the sheer amount of grade increased number of grade 3s as well. But that besides, let's talk about the four trigger types, right? So there are four triggers: yellow, critical, red, draw, blue, stand, and green, heal. So let's talk about each of them specifically. Critical is more of an offensive trigger. It lets your Vanguard deal one more damage, assuming it hits, right? Uh, stand is also another offensive trigger, and it lets you stand your units, your rearguard units, so you can attack multiple times in a turn. Draw is more of a hybrid between offensive and defensive because it lets you draw a card. What that means is on offense, you have more options and opportunities to play out your combos and pieces. But on defense, you could also draw into your intercepts and PGs and protect yourself. And lastly, heal. Heal is a purely defensive trigger. It lets you heal one damage conditionally, given that you have an equal you have equal or more damage than your opponent. What this means is, for example, you're at 4, your opponent's at 4, then you will heal. If you're at 3 and your opponent's at 4, you won't heal. But if you're at 5 and your opponent's at 4, then you will heal. The game works it out for you, so you don't really have to warp your mind around it. But yes, I was confused about this when I started Paper Vanguard. Um, but one thing that's different is that in Paper Vanguard you could choose up to 4 of each card, right? So if there's like 2 types of critical triggers, then you can play 8. Um, but generally, heals the basic rule for both Vanguard and Vanguard Zero is that you can only play 4. So by essence, Bushiroad is the game design is telling you that nudge nudge heal. There's a reason why we're limiting this to 4. It's really good. So let's assume we play 4 heals, right? What's wrong with critical, stand, and draw? Why won't we rather play more heals than these cards? So let's talk about, is the trigger game solved, right? Because there's only 4 types of triggers, there's only 13 slots, there's only so many possibilities. And the answer is, if you go through 80-90% of the competitive decks, not the random bulletin board decks, the competitive decks that work more consistently, it's 9 draws, 4 heal. Why is this meta, right? So we basically, just now we said 4 heals. There's a limiting factor for a reason. It's really good. It swings games. Why do we play 9 draws instead of 9 crit or 9 stand or a mix, right? Because, well, criticals proc criticals work differently in this game, right? There's certain conditions, and criticals don't help you push your game towards that streamlined strategy fast enough, right? So as we all know, PGs are a vital part of this game. This is the only way you can actually guard attacks, and you can't manually guard. So how does it work? They automated it so that whenever your opponent is going to take their 5th or 6th damage, they will utilize their PG. What this means is, for example, your opponent's at 3 damage, you attack with the grade 3, you hit a critical trigger, you think you hit 2 critical triggers, you think you're gonna win the game, you sacked, lucky bastard. You go, they PG, and then that's it. Nothing. You proc their PG, that's it. There's no difference between hitting one crit and two crit. It doesn't do much. It doesn't win you the game as effectively as it should be. For stand triggers, the weakness is the defensive system, right? Again, we can't guard, so what the devs did was, whenever you take a damage, you get plus 5k, right? So, for example, your Vanguard's 10k, right? You take your first damage, you're 15. You take your next damage, you're 20. So when you hit your stand, right? How much does that help you? Yeah, you get the plus 5k as well on offense. You get the stand as well, but it doesn't get you through that threshold. It's not consistent, right? In a game with so much luck involved, it's about how to streamline it and make it more consistent and make it more skill based, right? Because we're all skilled players here, aren't we? Lastly, drive checks, right? In the original game, whenever you check a card, you add it to your hand. What that meant is that while your opponent knows what specific cards are in your hand, if they take it to that extent, uh, it means you naturally draw more cards throughout the pace of the game, right? Turn one, ride, drive check, draw one. Turn two, ride, drive check, draw one. Turn three, ride, twin drive, draw two. But in this game, you don't really drive check. It's a different system, right? If it's a trigger, it goes to the drop zone. If it's not a trigger, it goes to the bottom of the deck. So naturally, compared to the actual paper game, there's less hands. There's a smaller hand size that you have, and henceforth, decks that really don't have this draw power, which we don't really have that right now yet. Not efficient draw power. We don't have that yet, and so we do need to play the 9 draws to make it so that our game is more streamlined and consistent. So let's talk about trigger customization, right? Given that we approach with 9 draw 4 heal, we assume that is the way to go. What do we do, right? So draws, you generally put that on your main Vanguard. You generally put that on cards you prefer to draw into, cards that you're willing to mulligan into, because as we talked about before, heals are superior to draws, right? And you want to check more heals than check more draws, generally speaking. So yeah, so for example, MLB from our previous video, you would put a draw on that. On the left, there's a DN list. You'd put it on your Dragonic Overlords because you do want to draw that and ride that first. If you want that cross ride, you put that on your DN because you want to draw into your DNs to activate your DNs, right? But you might not necessarily want to start with a dual axe dragon in your hand, right? Because okay, so the heals, right? You generally put that on your support cards, whether that means cards that work on the rear guard circle better, like Dual Axe Dragon. He's a 10k plus 3k attacker, so he hits numbers, or cards that, or especially cards that return to the deck. Like Ganslot, Edel, Rose. These cards go back into the deck. It means that you can actually check another heal. You have a higher chance to check that heal, and it's better than a dead card in your hand. So let's have some counter arguments, right? Let's assume that we move to a point where you played the game, you're bored of 9 draw, you think there's a better way, you disagree with what I said. Are there any cases where 9 draw is not quote unquote optimal? Well, yes, definitely, to a limited extent. Of course, as we stated before, the main problem with this game right now is the limited draw power, which is why we play 9 draws. But there are decks that work better or more efficiently without the draw triggers and with other types of triggers. So, for example, on the left side we have Muto's deck list of OTT. He was one of the top 4 on the JP 2020 championship, and he plays 2 stand triggers. So why is stand triggers viable? Why are stand triggers viable in OTT? You'd say, because it fixes the draw problem. Tsukiyomi naturally draws cards, right? Counterblast 2, draw 2. And because it can draw cards, the problem of the draw power is more mitigated. It's less impactful towards the deck. So other lists play crits as well, and that's also viable. But here we have a winning list, so that's something to think about. And then on the right side, we have a deck list for Spectral Duke from Game With. This is also something that a different fight has covered. Why do you play crits? Because we talked about how crits proc PGs, and so it doesn't end the game, right? But Spectral Duke works around it. Spectral Duke doesn't need to hit to restand, which means that if you do check a crit and you stack it on Spectral Duke, at least it can proc 2 PGs in a row. If not, you could hit and win the game. Spectral Duke plays with the zero system and not against the zero system. And that's what you're trying to look for, right? If you do want to play these crit triggers or stand triggers, you want to look for decks that, work around the weaknesses of the general deck. And then customize it and then experiment with it and try to add your own little spice to it, right? Because that's the fun. So some ideas from my personal experience. On the left side, there's a Soul Saver build from Game With again. This is a pretty bad build, to be honest, but it's a pretty budget build. So let's look at it, right? So you just started. You have a few Soul Savers. Soul Saver Dragon is pretty neat. In theory, you're like, oh yeah, I can Soul Blast, make my rear guards bulky. I can hit stand triggers. They can attack more. But there's some glaring weaknesses, right? For example, Barkle. Barkle is a great card in paper, but it's a really poor card in Zero. Because, first of all, you're losing triggers to call out triggers. 5k triggers, that is. And also, it means that you have to play at least one of each if you want to actually use the Superior Ride into Blaster Blade. That makes the deck not only less consistent, but, the winning image, how do you approach the strategy, is a bit convoluted. It's not very clear. But if you still want to play, Soul Saver Dragon, let's look at the deck list on the right. This is something that I made during Season 2, which is last month, during the quote-unquote Riser season, where everyone was just playing Tsukiyomis and Risers, right? And I played 5-draw 4 stand with the what's his name again? With the Tsukiyomi Ride Chain for Royal Paladins, right? So why would I play this? Well, because the conditions for Soul Saver is you need Soul, and you want to stand with bulky attacks, right? So, and also the deck mitigates your card advantage problem because you get to basically ride for free for the first 2 turns. And also the Ride Chain gives you the Soul you need to proc Soul Saver. So while the deck isn't the most optimal, Soul Saver really isn't the best deck right now. Really wasn't the best deck at all. Trying and experimenting with cards, trying to understand card advantage, trying to understand why certain triggers are played, and why 9 draw 4 heal is the general way to go is, I think, a good way to approach the game moving forward. So thank you for this quick video. Please, I hope you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe. Give me a chance. I know some of you have commented and I really appreciate it. Someone commented and asked me for a Shadow Paladin video, and I will be working on it. But as you can guess from my Royal Rush deck list, I am an F2 free-to-play player. I don't have all my pieces that I really do want, and I am waiting for the Shadow Raid up banner. Hopefully I'll do a roll video if you're interested, and I'll see how far I can work with that. So thank you, goodbye, I hope you enjoyed.